Lucas was a young man who lived in a small, quiet town. He worked at a local bookstore, spending his days helping customers and organizing shelves. Life was simple and peaceful, but Lucas often felt like something was missing. He didn't have many family members around. His parents had passed away when he was a child, and since then, he had lived alone. One sunny morning, Lucas found a letter in his mailbox. It was unusual because he didn't expect any mail that day. The envelope was old and had a strange handwriting on it. He opened it carefully and began to read. The letter was from a lawyer. It said that Lucas's grandmother had passed away recently and left him a piece of land. The land was outside the town, near the old forest. Lucas had never heard about this land before. His grandmother was someone he loved very much, but they hadn't spoken in years. She lived far away, and Lucas didn't know much about her life. The letter explained that the land had been in the family for many years, but it was empty and unused. Now, it was his to keep. Lucas felt a mix of emotions. He was sad because his grandmother was gone, but also curious about the land. The letter said he could visit the land anytime. He decided to go and see it for himself. The next day, Lucas packed a small bag and took a bus to the edge of town. When he arrived, he walked along a narrow dirt road surrounded by tall trees and wildflowers. The air smelled fresh and clean. After a while, he reached an old wooden gate. It was covered with vines and looked like no one had opened it for a long time. Lucas pushed the gate slowly, and it creaked loudly. Inside, the land was wild and beautiful. There were tall grass, bushes, and some old trees. The ground was uneven, and he could see the remains of a small stone wall near a clearing. It was quiet, peaceful, and empty. As Lucas walked around, he felt a strange connection with the place. It was as if the land held memories of his family and his grandmother. He sat down on a fallen log and closed his eyes. He imagined what the land might have looked like many years ago, full of life and laughter. Suddenly, a noise made him open his eyes. He saw a group of birds flying over the trees and heard the sound of a nearby stream. Lucas smiled. The land was full of nature, untouched and calm. But as he looked closer, he also saw signs that the land was not forgotten. There were old footprints in the mud and some fresh tire marks near the entrance. Someone had been there recently. Lucas's heart beat faster. He wondered who else knew about this land. The next few days, Lucas visited the land several times. He cleaned up some of the trash and tried to clear a small path. He dreamed of turning the land into something special, maybe a small garden or a place where families could come to enjoy nature. One afternoon, while Lucas was clearing leaves near the gate, he saw a car parked on the road. A woman stepped out. She was tall, dressed smartly, and had a confident smile. Lucas did not recognize her, but she looked important. "Hello," the woman said as she walked toward him. "I'm Sarah. I'm the president of the homeowners association here." Lucas felt nervous but said, "Hi, I'm Lucas. I recently inherited this land." Sarah nodded and smiled politely. "I see. This land is very important to the neighborhood. It has been empty for a long time. I hope you will take good care of it." Lucas wasn't sure what to say. He had many questions but felt unsure if he should ask them. Sarah looked around and added, "We have plans to improve the area. I'm sure we can work together." After she left, Lucas felt confused. He did not understand what Sarah meant by plans. Who was going to build on the land? And why did she seem so sure? That night, Lucas thought about the land and the woman. He looked at the letter from the lawyer again. The paper said he had full rights to the land, but it also mentioned something about restrictions because it was part of the neighborhood. Lucas knew he had to learn more. The land was a gift from his grandmother, and he wanted to respect her wishes. But he also felt worried. What if the land was not really his to keep? What if others wanted it too? Over the next week, Lucas talked to some neighbors. Some were kind and curious about the land, but others seemed cautious. A few people whispered about Sarah, the HOA president, and how she was very powerful in the town. Lucas realized this inheritance was more complicated than he thought. It was not just about land. It was about family, trust, and community. He didn't know what would happen next, but one thing was clear: his life was about to change. As Lucas stood again at the gate, looking at the wild land under the sunset, he made a silent promise to protect it. No matter what came, he would find a way to honor his grandmother's gift. The quiet land held many secrets, and Lucas was ready to discover them all. Lucas woke up early the next morning. His thoughts were filled with questions about the land and the woman he had met, Sarah, the HOA president. He wondered what plans to improve the area really meant. The land was his now, but how could he protect it from people who might want to take it away? He decided to visit the land again before going to work. The sun was soft and warm as he walked down the familiar dirt road. The birds sang their morning songs, and the breeze gently moved the tall grass. But when he reached the gate, Lucas stopped. Something was different. There were fresh tracks on the dirt road, tire marks that looked like a large vehicle had passed through recently. Lucas's heart beat faster. He moved forward carefully and soon saw what had caused the tracks. On his land, right in the middle of the clearing, there was a large construction site. Machines, workers, and piles of wood and bricks covered the area. A tall, beautiful house was being built. Its walls were already up, and the roof was taking shape. It was a big, expensive-looking villa, far more than what Lucas had imagined for the quiet land. Lucas felt shocked and confused. How could this happen? No one had told him anything. He had the legal right to the land, or so the letter had said. Yet here was a huge house, being built without his permission. Before he could think more, he heard a voice behind him. "Lucas, I see you found it." Lucas turned and saw Sarah walking towards him. She wore a hard hat and held a clipboard. Her smile was calm but firm. "This land has been part of the neighborhood for a long time," Sarah said. "The community needs new spaces, new homes. This villa will be a gift for everyone." Lucas tried to speak but found it hard to get the words out. "But, this is my land," he finally said. "My grandmother left it to me." Sarah nodded slowly. "I know. But the HOA has certain rules. And sometimes, those rules allow us to use land in ways that help the whole neighborhood." Lucas felt his chest tighten. "I never agreed to this," he said. "No one asked me." Sarah's eyes softened a little. "Lucas, I understand this is difficult. But the project is already well underway. It will take months to finish. The community is excited. You could be part of something bigger." Lucas looked at the villa again. The windows sparkled in the sunlight. The walls were strong and clean. It was beautiful, but it didn't feel like his. It felt like something taken from him. He left the land that day feeling empty. On his way home, he thought about what to do. He wanted to protect his grandmother's gift, but he also didn't want to make enemies. He wondered if Sarah was right. Maybe this villa could bring good things. Over the next few days, Lucas watched the construction from a distance. Workers came early in the morning and left late at night. The villa grew taller and grander. He noticed how some neighbors stopped to admire it, talking about how it would increase the value of their homes and bring more visitors. Lucas felt like an outsider in his own story. Every day, the villa took more of his land. But he stayed quiet. He wanted to learn more before making any decisions. One afternoon, Lucas met a neighbor named Mrs. Harris while walking in the nearby park. She was an elderly woman with kind eyes and a gentle voice. "Lucas, dear, I heard about the land," Mrs. Harris said softly. "Sarah has strong plans for this place. But I also know your grandmother well. She loved this land deeply." Lucas smiled faintly. "I want to honor her," he said. "But I don't know how." Mrs. Harris nodded. "Sometimes, we have to wait and watch before we can act. You are wise to be patient." That evening, Lucas sat by the window in his small apartment, looking out at the town lights. He thought about patience and waiting. But inside, his heart felt heavy. The villa was more than just a building, it was a symbol of a challenge he had never expected. The next morning, Lucas found a small note slipped under his door. It was from Sarah. The note was polite and simple. "Lucas, I would like to invite you to visit the villa once it is finished. Let's talk and find a way to work together." Sarah. Lucas held the note in his hands, thinking about what to do. Should he trust her? Or should he prepare to fight for what was his? For now, he decided to wait a little longer. The villa on his inherited land was no longer just a building under the sky. It was a test of patience, courage, and hope. Lucas didn't know what the future held, but one thing was clear: this story was just beginning. Days passed, and the villa on Lucas's land grew taller and grander. From his small apartment, he often watched the workers come and go, their tools making sounds that echoed in the quiet neighborhood. The villa was becoming a huge building with wide windows, beautiful walls, and a tall roof shining in the sunlight. Lucas felt a strange mix of emotions. Sometimes he was angry that his land was being used without his permission. Sometimes he felt sad as if the place where his grandmother's memories lived was being taken away. But most of all, he felt confused. What could he do? He wasn't sure if he had the power to stop the building or change anything. He stayed quiet. Instead of confronting Sarah or the workers, Lucas chose to watch silently. He told himself to be patient. Maybe there was a reason behind all this, something he didn't understand yet. One afternoon, Lucas took a walk near the villa. The sunlight was warm, and the air smelled like fresh grass. As he approached the fence that surrounded the property, he saw a group of workers unloading heavy wood and bricks. Lucas stopped for a moment, then decided to speak quietly to one of the workers. "Excuse me," he said softly. "Do you know who owns this land?" The worker looked at Lucas with tired eyes but smiled kindly. "I don't know much," he replied. "I just build what they tell me. But the lady in charge is Sarah, the HOA president." Lucas nodded, thankful for the small information. "Has anyone talked to you about the owner?" "About me?" The worker shook his head. "No. They don't want to bother the owner, I guess. They just want to finish the villa." Lucas felt a lump in his throat. He realized that no one had told the workers about him or his rights. To them, the land was just a place for building, not someone's heritage. He walked away slowly, looking at the villa's walls. They were strong and clean, but they didn't feel like home. Not yet. Later that evening, Lucas sat on a bench in the park, thinking about what he had seen. His phone buzzed, and he saw a message from Sarah. "Lucas, I hope you are doing well. I wanted to invite you to a meeting next week with some neighbors. We will discuss the future of the community and the villa. Your voice is important." Lucas stared at the message. Sarah was trying to reach out, but he still didn't know if he could trust her. He decided to go to the meeting. Maybe it was time to speak up. The day of the meeting arrived. Lucas entered the small community hall and saw familiar faces, some neighbors he had met, others he hadn't. Sarah stood at the front, smiling politely. "Thank you all for coming," she said. "This villa is more than a home. It is a place where we hope the community can come together, share stories, and create new memories." Lucas listened carefully. Sarah talked about gardens, playgrounds, and spaces for meetings. She described how the villa could be a new center for the town. Some neighbors nodded and smiled. Others looked unsure. When Sarah finished, she invited people to ask questions. Lucas's heart beat fast. He stood up and spoke clearly. "Sarah, I'm Lucas," he said. "This land was given to me by my grandmother. I want to respect her gift and protect the land's history. I'm glad the community wants to grow, but I wish I had been included earlier." The room was quiet. Sarah looked at Lucas with a thoughtful expression. "You are right, Lucas," she said. "I should have spoken with you sooner. I hope we can work together from now on." Lucas felt a small hope growing inside him. Maybe this was the start of something better. After the meeting, some neighbors came to talk to Lucas. Mrs. Harris smiled warmly and said, "I'm glad you spoke up. Sometimes, the quiet watcher needs to find their voice." Lucas smiled back. For the first time in days, he felt he was not alone. As the sun set, Lucas returned to the land. The villa stood tall, shining softly in the golden light. He touched the fence gently and whispered, "I will find a way to protect this place. For you, Grandma." The land was changing, but so was Lucas. From a silent watcher, he was becoming someone who would stand for what was right with patience, courage, and hope. After the community meeting, Lucas felt a little lighter. He had spoken up, and some neighbors had listened. But deep inside, he still carried many questions. He wanted to understand Sarah better, the woman who had built a huge villa on his land without asking him first. One afternoon, Lucas decided to visit the land again. The villa was nearly finished now. Its walls gleamed white, and the garden was beginning to bloom with flowers. As Lucas walked closer, he noticed something unexpected. At the edge of the property, near a small patch of wild grass, Sarah was quietly working with her hands in the soil. Lucas stopped and watched for a moment. Sarah looked peaceful, almost different from the strong, confident woman he had met before. She carefully planted small flowers and watered the ground. Feeling curious, Lucas stepped forward. "Hello, Sarah," he said softly. Sarah looked up and smiled, a little surprised but welcoming. "Lucas," she said kindly. "I didn't expect to see you here." Lucas nodded. "I wanted to understand this place better," he said. "It's hard to believe all this is happening so fast." Sarah wiped her hands on her pants and looked at the garden. "I know it seems sudden," she said. "But this land means a lot to me too. Maybe in a different way." Lucas raised his eyebrows, surprised. "Really? How?" Sarah took a deep breath and began to speak slowly. "When I was a child, my family lived near this town. My mother told me stories about this land, stories of families, of neighbors helping each other, and of a time when people cared deeply for this place. Lucas listened carefully. He didn't know much about the land's history, but hearing Sarah's words made him feel connected. My grandmother was part of the community, Sarah continued. She used to tell me how important it was to keep the neighborhood safe and beautiful. When I became HOA president, I promised to protect that promise even if it meant making hard decisions. Lucas thought about this. Maybe Sarah wasn't just a person trying to take his land. Maybe she cared, in her own way. I didn't know any of this, Lucas said quietly. I just want to make sure the land is respected. Sarah smiled gently. That's why I'm glad you're here now. You bring the history back. Your grandmother's memory lives in you. They stood quietly for a moment, looking at the garden where new flowers were growing. Lucas felt something change inside him. The villa was still a big building on his land, but now it felt less like a stranger and more like a part of the story, a story they both were a part of. Would you like to help with the garden sometime? Sarah asked, breaking the silence. Lucas smiled. I'd like that. Over the next few days, Lucas and Sarah met often by the garden. They planted flowers, trimmed bushes, and talked about the neighborhood. Lucas learned about Sarah's dreams for the villa not just as a home, but as a place where families could gather, children could play, and the community could grow stronger. One afternoon, while working side by side, Lucas shared stories about his grandmother. He told Sarah how she loved nature, how she believed that every piece of land had a spirit and a story to tell. Sarah listened with respect. She sounds like a wonderful woman, she said. She was, Lucas agreed. And I want to honor her memory. Sarah nodded. We will. Together. As the sun set, they stood side by side, watching the garden bloom under the soft light. Lucas realized that sometimes, understanding could build bridges where walls once stood. The villa was no longer just a symbol of conflict. It was a beginning, a chance to bring the past and the future together. That evening, Lucas walked home feeling hopeful. He knew challenges were still ahead, but now he didn't feel alone. There was someone who cared, someone who shared his respect for the land and its history. The unexpected connection between Lucas and Sarah was growing, like the garden they nurtured together. And with it came a quiet promise, to protect the land, to honor the past, and to build a better future side by side. The villa was now complete. It stood tall and proud on the land that Lucas had inherited from his grandmother. The beautiful white walls shone under the sun, and the garden they had planted together bloomed with color. To many neighbors, the villa was a symbol of new beginnings and hope for the community. But for Lucas, it was a complicated feeling, a mix of pride, sadness, and quiet strength. Sarah had invited Lucas to tour the villa. He walked through the rooms, feeling the cool marble floors and looking out through the large windows at the land stretching beyond. The inside was elegant, full of light, and carefully designed to be welcoming. This is amazing, Lucas said quietly. Sarah smiled. I'm glad you think so. I wanted this to be a place for everyone, a place where people can gather and feel at home. Lucas nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. There was something important he had been thinking about, something he hadn't yet shared with Sarah. That evening, Lucas sat at his small kitchen table with his laptop open. He had spent days researching the legal documents about the land. As he read more carefully, he discovered something surprising. Since the villa was built on his land without his permission, the law gave him the right to claim the property officially. Lucas felt a rush of emotions. He could have stopped the building long ago, but he hadn't. He had waited, watched, and even helped in small ways. Now, the choice was his to claim the land and villa fully, or to let things be as they were. He thought about his grandmother's gift. She had left the land to him with love and trust. He wanted to honor her, but he also didn't want to hurt anyone. Sarah had been kind and honest, and the neighbors seemed happy with the villa. After much thought, Lucas decided to speak with Sarah. The next day, he called her and asked to meet at the villa. Sarah arrived with a gentle smile. "Lucas, what's on your mind?" Lucas took a deep breath. "Sarah, I've been learning about the land and my rights. Since the villa was built without my permission, I can legally claim it. But I didn't want to rush or fight. I wanted to understand you and the community first." Sarah listened quietly. "I want to claim the villa and the land officially," Lucas continued, "but I don't want this to be a fight. I want us to work together. I want to protect the land and make sure it respects my grandmother's memory." Sarah looked at him with respect and nodded. "I understand, Lucas. I'm glad you waited to talk to me. I want the same to protect the land and bring the community together." They talked for a long time, sharing ideas and hopes. Sarah explained her plans to use the villa as a community center, a place for meetings, celebrations, and quiet moments in the garden. Lucas felt hopeful. Maybe this place could be both his grandmother's land and the community's heart. After their conversation, Lucas went to meet a lawyer to begin the process of officially claiming the villa and land. The lawyer explained the steps and helped Lucas understand his rights. Though the process would take time, Lucas felt calm and confident. He had waited patiently, watched silently, and now he was ready to take his place as the rightful owner, not to fight, but to build something better. Word spread slowly in the neighborhood. Some neighbors were surprised, others curious, but most were happy to see Lucas and Sarah working together. One morning, Lucas and Sarah stood at the entrance of the villa, watching as families arrived for the first community event. Children laughed and ran across the garden, neighbors greeted each other warmly, and the villa filled with life. Lucas smiled and looked at Sarah. "This is what I hoped for." Sarah smiled back. "It's just the beginning." As the sun set, Lucas felt a deep sense of peace. The villa was no longer just a building on his land. It was a home for memories, for friendship, and for new stories waiting to be told. Lucas thought about his grandmother and whispered a quiet thank you. Her gift had brought challenges, but it had also brought him here to a new beginning, full of hope and promise. Weeks passed since the first community event at the villa. The place had become a gathering spot for the neighbors. Every weekend, families came to share meals, children played in the garden, and friends talked under the shade of tall trees. The villa was no longer just a building, it was a symbol of connection and new friendships. Lucas found himself spending more time there. He helped organize events, listened to neighbors' stories, and worked alongside Sarah to make the villa feel like everyone's home. His heart, once heavy with doubt and sadness, now carried hope. One afternoon, as Lucas was arranging chairs in the main hall, Sarah approached him with a thoughtful look. "Lucas," she said softly, "can I talk to you for a moment?" Lucas nodded, wiping his hands on his jeans. "Of course." They stepped outside into the garden where the sunlight filtered through the leaves, creating patterns on the ground. "I want to thank you," Sarah began. "For your patience, your courage, and for trusting me. I know this hasn't been easy." Lucas smiled gently. "It wasn't easy, but I believe this place can bring people together. My grandmother would have liked that." Sarah looked around at the blooming flowers and the happy voices coming from inside the villa. She left a beautiful gift. And now, together, We're making it even more special. They stood quietly, feeling the warmth of the afternoon sun. Then Sarah spoke again. There is something I want to ask you. Would you consider becoming a partner in managing the villa? Not just the owner, but someone who helps shape its future. Lucas felt surprised but honored. I'd like that very much. From that day forward, Lucas and Sarah worked side by side. They planned community workshops, invited artists to display their work, and organized charity events for local schools. The villa became a center of creativity, learning, and kindness. One evening, after a long day of preparations, Lucas sat on the villa's porch, watching the stars appear in the dark sky. Sarah joined him with 2 cups of tea. Do you remember when we first met? Sarah asked with a smile. Lucas laughed softly. Yes. I was angry and confused. I thought you had taken something from me. Sarah nodded. And now? Now, I see that this place is more than land or buildings. It's about people, their stories, their dreams, and their hope. Sarah raised her cup. To new beginnings. Lucas clinked his cup with hers. To new beginnings. Their friendship grew stronger, built on trust and respect. Lucas felt proud to carry his grandmother's legacy forward, and Sarah found joy in seeing the community come alive. One morning, as they walked through the garden, a little girl ran up to them, holding a small bouquet of flowers. These are for you, she said shyly to Lucas. Lucas smiled and knelt to accept the flowers. Thank you. They're beautiful. The girl's mother called her back, and Lucas looked at Sarah. See? This is why we do this, he said softly. Sarah nodded. For moments like these. Life at the villa was not always easy. There were disagreements and challenges, but Lucas and Sarah faced them together. They listened, learned, and made decisions with care. Through it all, Lucas remembered the lesson his grandmother had taught him to be patient and kind, even when things seemed difficult. One day, as Lucas stood on the hill overlooking the villa and the town beyond, he felt a deep sense of peace. The land was no longer just a place he inherited, it was a home he helped build. His grandmother's gift had been more than land, it was a chance to grow, to forgive, and to love. And Lucas was ready for whatever the future held, knowing he was not alone. The seasons changed, and with them, the villa on Lucas's land blossomed into a true heart of the community. What had started as a place of conflict and confusion became a place of celebration and hope. Families came to festivals, neighbors met for quiet conversations, and children ran freely in the garden that Lucas and Sarah had helped plant together. Lucas often thought back to the first days when he had discovered the villa being built on his inherited land without his permission. It felt like a lifetime ago. So much had changed since then, not just the villa, but himself and the community around him. One bright morning, Lucas stood at the villa's entrance, greeting neighbors who had gathered for a special event. It was the anniversary of the villa's opening, a day to celebrate the unity and growth of their neighborhood. The sun shone warmly, and the air was filled with laughter and music. Sarah approached Lucas, holding a small book. Lucas, she said with a smile, I have something for you. Lucas took the book and opened it. Inside were photographs and stories from neighbors, memories shared, moments captured, and dreams written down. It was a collection of the community's journey, a tribute to the villa and what it had come to mean. This is beautiful, Lucas said, his voice soft. Thank you. Sarah nodded. It's our story. Your story. The villa wouldn't be what it is without you. Lucas felt a warmth in his heart. The struggles, the patience, the quiet moments of watching and waiting, they all led to this. Later, Lucas stood on the small hill overlooking the villa and the neighborhood. The land stretched wide, touched by the golden light of the afternoon sun. He thought of his grandmother, the woman who had trusted him with this land, who had loved it deeply. He whispered, "Thank you, Grandma. For this gift, for the lessons, for the hope." At that moment, a gentle breeze moved through the trees, as if answering him. Lucas turned and walked back toward the villa. Children were playing, neighbors were talking, and Sarah was waiting with a smile. Together, they had built more than a villa. They had built a legacy, one of respect, friendship, and community. And Lucas knew this was just the beginning.